Stop the train. Doesn't it sometimes feel that whoever decided what speed this bullet train called life should be steaming ahead at, it's just a little bit too much? So much so, at times, that not only is it hard to enjoy the scenery passing by the window, hell, it's sometimes impossible to discern. People, places, and things zoom by so quickly, it all just becomes a blur. A total blur of distorted perceptions and unfathomable takeaways. So it becomes hard to take in, perceive, and absorb that instead of assessing each separate piece of scenery for what it is. A beautiful thing in its own right, or a hit and miss in our book. So we start inevitably perceiving the blur itself as a real, palpable entity. And we feel compelled to make sense of it. It's just the way we are wired. We need to make sense of things to assess and appreciate the level of threat or reward. Do I deem this to be a good or bad thing? Is this a worthwhile endeavor? What are the chances of a positive outcome here? What are the chances of abject and total failure? Will this elevate my existence? Give me sustenance? Or can this kill me? These questions are always firing away in the subconscious, and the back burner is always on somewhere deep in the recesses of our mind. How do you make sense of a blur? Objectively, you cannot. At face value, a blur is just a blur, a mixed whole that cannot be undone. The paint is mixed, the milk is spilled, the plaster is dry, and there's too much salt that's already in the soup. The unfortunate email is whooshing away through the ether. It's done. And here's where it's so easy to get yourself in trouble. Sometimes you notice things, or rather you think you see things in the natural distortions of the blur. And simply because you finally managed to pick something up, something that may not even be there, you take it for truth nonetheless. You take it and you run with it. You can't be everywhere all at once. How often have you heard a rumor and allowed it to create an opinion? How many times have you let your ego ruin your entire day because a colleague simply forgot to invite you to a meeting or include you in a discussion? With no malicious intent, by the way. How often have you given credit way too quickly and haphazardly where it was objectively undeserved? Little things we think we pick up that we never cross-reference out of spite or out of an instinct of self-preservation are not necessarily true. We are all on the same bullet train, though. We are all equally excited to be there and hope that it's going to be an amazing journey. And we are all terrified by its speed. And guess what? I think we're all just as dumbfounded by the blur outside the window, ever shifting, moving, and never slowing down. Therein, I think, lies a possible solution. That's where you can find some proper agency, in numbers. So how about simply cross-referencing the things you pick up? Hey, I heard this rumor. Is there anything to it? What do you think? If you guys had any questions for me on that meeting I missed, let's follow up. I'm available, so let's compare notes if needed. Hey, I think this thing right here is the beautiful result of a great effort and we should reward it. Please tell me if you agree. This, of course, does not mean necessarily that you cannot ignore some opinions. I mean, you can and you should. But at the same time, bouncing things off of people you trust is the best way to make sense of the mercurial blur outside the bullet train windows.